Yeah. But okay, let's make a start. So today on A Good Old Natter With, I have with me the most excellent Duncan Woodward. How you doing, mate?
All right, how are you?
Not too bad at all for a Sunday. Not too bad at all. Okay, first question then, mate. Your first gaming experience?
Right, okay. So, apart from playing a couple of older type arcade machines, like playing stuff like Pac-Man and Space Invaders, you know, when I see an arcade machine in a pub or something when I was little, I think the first like at home experience was when my brother got his Amstrad CPC one Christmas, and we were both sat there playing games, and I can never remember which one out of the two it was. It was either the Batman game, the 3D isometric one, or Head Over Heels. It was one of those two that was the first game I played. And it would explain, I think, why I love Head Over Heels so much as one of my favourite 8-bit games. Probably because it was one of my first experiences.
Right. Okay. Did you not play arcade games or anything like that? Did you not go to arcades?
We didn't have many of them where I lived. We did have a couple, and I did go to arcades a bit later, but we didn't get very many in the town that I lived in. But when we went on holiday to places like Butlins and stuff like that, I'd sit there and pretty much rinse my entire, pocket money on the arcades there, especially at Butlins. They always had good arcade machines there.
Yeah. Have you got any first memories of some early games at the arcades?
And I think because I'm that sort of like weird age group where I was born in the early 80s, so by the time I was playing arcade games, it was more mid 80s, and I've got memories of playing things like Gauntlet and Outrun, Space Harrier. I always gravitated to those because I liked the Sega scaling thing, but I also liked the wacky control methods of things like, Space Harrier and things like that. I liked the sitting in a cabinet or using a steering wheel over a joystick and buttons at the time.
Yeah. That was a good time, wasn't it? For arcades.
I think another big one as well was there was a family pub we used to like to go to. That it was like a spud pub. They served like jacket spuds with fillings in and stuff. They did some really good meals there, actually. But they had an arcade set. Had two arcade machines and a pinball machine. Now I can't remember what the pinball machine was, but the two arcade machines were Gauntlet and Outrun. And me and my brother would play Gauntlet, and all you could hear was "Red Warrior is it." Yellow Wizard is it. Red Warrior is it. And it was just funny. Yeah, it was such a good laugh. So I've got fond memories of Gauntlet as well.
It was such a good Atari game that was, with the audio and the speech. It was just, it stood on its own, didn't it, that cab?
And it was well ahead of anything else, to be honest with you, at the time, or at least I felt it was in a lot of ways, graphically, sound wise, and just gameplay wise. They'd taken the whole Dungeons and Dragons type thing but made it more arcadey, and made it more suitable for quick blaster-thon, and I like that. I'm all about that.
Yeah, it was, because you were quite overwhelmed by the enemy, and really to get anywhere in that game you had to have the 4 players.
Yeah, you really did. I mean, they did 2-player cab versions of it as well, which is like, I suppose that's nice for saving space. But
I don't remember the 2-player one. No, don't remember that one.
Yeah, it was like a cut down version of the cab. It was more like a generic jammer cab than it had There was a 2-player version of the Gauntlet. Yeah, they had to cut them in. They had one of them in one of the arcades at Blackpool when I lived in Blackpool.
Right, I wonder if that was official. Do you think that was an official one, or do you think?
I don't know, to be honest with you. And it's in the main ROM set, but it might be an unofficial bootleg type thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them about.
Yeah, I'm guessing Craig Turner's one to ask
about that. Yeah,
he'd know, wouldn't he? Yeah. So how about first computer or games console?
Right. Now, obviously, I've mentioned my brother had an Amstrad CPC, but my first, I had a Commodore 16.
Oh, right, okay. I was never a fan. I'm never a fan.
It's not got a good reputation. It was brought out at the wrong time. It was a massive flop in a lot of ways. It was a marketing error by Commodore, thought by a lot of people, but it did have potential. Problem is, it was based on the Plus 4 and it was kneecapped with only 16K instead of the 64K of the Plus 4.
I was going to say it was after the 64 as well, so it was like, what's the point?
After the 64, this is what I was going to get onto as well.
Yeah.
It didn't have the SID chip. It didn't have the hardware sprites or anything like that. It was like, it's like, this is a backward step.
Yeah.
But the reason it did somewhat well in Europe, in mainland Europe, and even in the UK for a short period of time, is its price.
Yeah.
It released at like £99, and it got really cheap at one point. I mean, they were flogging them for 50 quid a pop at one point, and that's why there was quite a lot of them on the market. And the games, well, you can imagine they were a bit basic. They weren't amazing, but the true hero or true heroes of that machine were Mastertronic. And pretty much any of the Mastertronic games were, majority of them were pretty good on the C16 for what it was. I say pretty good for what the machine was.
Yeah, its capabilities,
For its capabilities. And then you got people like Sean Southern, who was known more for the Lotus series on the Amiga, but he was coding stuff on the C16 at one point as well. And a lot of his games that were on it were pretty good. So yeah, it's not the greatest computing start, but I found it interesting. You know, I was quite young at the time. I was single-digit age group, must have been about 6 or 7, something like that. And I had my own machine that could play games. And when I got bored, I was that geeky kid who would dig out the Commodore manual, flick through it, start typing in the basic examples. And I suppose it kick-started my interest in computers, really, more than anything else.
Yeah, which is obviously the that's the important one, isn't it? Really, you know, whatever started you off.
Yeah.
And there seems to be. I was never a fan of that machine. I love the look. I love the look of the aesthetic.
Brilliant in that black case with the charcoal grey keys. That's brilliant. That.
Yeah, but I was going to say the plus 4 really did look different.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it might be a bit of a Marmite machine to look at, but I like that one.
Yeah, it is a bit of a Marmite machine. The TED series, as they call them, or the 264 series, which was basically the 16, the 116, and the plus 4. If you had one at the time, you'd appreciate it. I think if you never had one, or you saw one and thought, well, that's not all that good, you wouldn't like it, I don't think. It is definitely a Marmite machine.
Yeah.
But it's also one of those that's an intrigue by a few people. I go to a few like meetups, Amiga meetups mostly, but the meetups I go to, even though they're Amiga branded meetups, we take other systems as well. And I have taken my C16 or my Plus 4 a couple of times, and the amount of people who are looking at it like, I've never seen one of those. What's this? And all of a sudden, there's a lot of conversation and interest over the machine. And I like to play a lot of homebrew games. The homebrew scene, what's coming out now on the indie scene, is really good for the system. You've probably seen that because I post in the Facebook group about, you know, homebrew games on these old machines. And yeah, when people see that, they're like, well, I didn't know it was capable of that. And I was like, but now we've got the benefit of 40 odd years of understanding the machine that they didn't have back then.
Yeah, it's like all machines, isn't it? From back in the day, the communities surrounding every old machine really is growing, still growing, and the homebrew scene, like you say, they're making these machines do things they weren't supposed to do. So that's why that intrigue's there.
Yeah.
But there's only so many you can keep, isn't there? And there's only so much time in the day, and there's only so many that you can you can mess with. So have you got a collection yourself?
Yeah, I've got. Well, you've probably seen when you've been to Revival. I pretty much supply the majority of the 8-bit micros for events like Revival. I did slim down the collection a bit because I got to a stage where I was collecting nearly everything I could that had a keyboard in it, and some of them were never getting powered on, and I didn't have any interest in. No. I had a brief, how shall I put it, a brief fling with the Dragon 32, but then I was like, well, I'm not really into this machine, so I punted that on to someone else. I had a brief fling with the Auric Atmos, which I think is a really nice looking machine. But then I was like, I've got no nostalgia or interest for this machine, so that got punted on. I had a Mattel Aquarius at one point, and I'm like, this has got to be the worst 8-bit computer that I've ever seen. I mean, it's got its charms, but I was like, what is this? It was like 70s tech released in the 80s. So that got moved on. So now I tend to be concentrating on machines that I'm really interested in, which for me is Commodore 8-bit, Amiga, a little bit of ST, Amstrad CPC, Spectrum, that sort of thing, really. So yeah, they are mostly mainstream machines, but they're ones that I grew up with. If I didn't own them, I knew people that owned them. So it's that. And although I'm mostly into computers, I do have a couple of consoles as well, but I'm more limited on my console collecting. I tend to stick to NES, SNES, Master System, Mega Drive. That's about it, really, on the console side of things. Those are the only ones I really had any interest in.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. So what events have you taken your collections to in the past?
Well, mostly it was Revival, a lot of it. But I did used to do stuff for Play Expo back in the old days when it used to be replay events, and obviously that changed hands, and Play Expo started getting hold of their own kit, so they weren't concentrating on getting other people, providing it as much. But Revival has always been the big one for me, where I pretty much fill my car with my entire collection.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I do a lot of, like I say, little meetups, like these Amiga meetups. LAG and YAG are the big ones, which is Lincolnshire Amiga Group and Yorkshire Amiga Group. So those are the two big ones for me, especially Yorkshire Amiga Group, because that's something that I was involved in the creation of. Although I don't run it, I was involved in the early stages of it. So that's my flagship, I think, really. Yorkshire Amiga Group, yeah.
So what happens at these? Because I often see these Amiga meets, pop up on various social media platforms. What happens? Are they like Revival, or?
They are pretty much. It's they are, but a bit of a smaller scale because they're more community driven. With smaller group of people. But basically, we turn up, we put our systems on the table, we play games, chat to each other, all that sort of thing. And we, like the one yesterday that I went to at Link's Amiga Group, there was a guy there who did a talk on the Amiga and the internet, getting Amigas online and what browsers work in the modern day and what websites work in the modern day and things like that. And that was a really good talk, especially if you're interested in that sort of thing. It depends on your interest level. Some people see the Amiga as a gaming machine, but some people like me used it as a mainstream daily driver machine throughout most of the 90s. So as well as focusing on gaming, we also do a bit of other stuff as well. And like I said earlier, although it's an Amiga group, we're not limited to Amigas. Bring any system. If you've got something you want, bring it along. we'll have it. Everybody will have a chat. There's one guy who regularly brings things like Dreamcasts and Xboxes and things like that, which is nice because it breaks up seeing a room full of the same machine.
Yeah.
I always tend to turn up with, a couple of different. I usually take 2 systems to these. I usually bring one Amiga, and then I'll bring one of something else, and it's usually a Commodore 8-bit, but there has been times where I turned up with a Spectrum Plus 2, and I took an Amstrad 6128 Plus, which got a lot of attention because I found some really good homebrew demos that we used the Plus features. And then people were like, I didn't know an Amstrad could do that. I'm like, yeah, a lot of people don't.
So what are the Plus features?
So the Amstrad Plus range, you got a much better color palette. You got 4,096 colors instead of the 27 or whatever it was. You got some limited blitter and hardware sprite support. And like I say, you got a blitter chip in it as well. So suddenly, it's almost like a poor man's Amiga or poor man's ST.
Yeah.
Its downside was it still had the Z80 processor and 128K of RAM.
Oh, a lot of people disagree with the Z80 there.
Yeah, in 1990 or 91. Now, when I say the downside is it still had a Z80, Z80 is a great CPU, but in the 90s, it was very old hat at that point.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Very old hat. I mean, we were well into the 68,000 CPUs of like the Amiga, the ST, and the Mac. Intel x86 was really kicking off. We'd got 386s, 486s round the corner, and the Pentium, at the end of the light at the end of the tunnel. So all of a sudden, these 8-bit machines were pretty pants in comparison, and that was the problem with the Amstrad Plus range. In the Amstrad Plus range, obviously we got the 6128 Plus and the 464 Plus, but they also made a game console version of it. They had the GX4000.
I've seen one of those.
Yeah, which is basically the same thing. It's a 464 Plus without a keyboard.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and obviously without the tape drive, you just got the cartridge input. And well, those bombed hard. And obviously, when those bombed, it was going to be curtains for the computers as well that were based on the same hardware. A lot of the cartridge games were tape games or disc games adapted to cartridge. It didn't use the extra features. There was only 1 or 2 that did.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think back then it was almost just fashionable to not like anything that Amstrad did. Yeah,
exactly.
So especially if you're a Sinclair user.
Yeah.
Once they took over, nobody liked the Plus 2 and Plus 3s. Nobody, because it was Amstrad. Even though everybody loves them now, they're great machines. Nobody liked it.
You're going to hate me for this, but I think Amstrad really improved the Spectrum range. I loved the Plus 2 and Plus 3.
They probably did, but what I'm saying is back then, you were so blinkered. It was like, no, it's Amstrad. I'm not even gonna entertain it.
I was like that with the Amiga. I was like, oh no, these Atari boys, no, I'm not interested in their rubbish, But then I quite like the ST now. It's quite
I think that's it's a thing of age, isn't it? As you get older and you start surrounding yourself with all these machines again, and machines that you never saw when you were a kid or you couldn't afford them or whatever, you just appreciate everything.
It's
and the capabilities of the machine.
It's nice to see what life was like on the opposite side of the fence. Yeah. But you know what? I'll tell you how much I'm liking the ST recently.
Oh, go on.
For a laugh, me and Mike decided when we did our YAG event last year at Leeds, we both turned up with Atari STs. And when people were coming in through the door, I was telling them, you've come to the wrong event. It's Yorkshire Atari Group.
Oh, you was playing them up. Oh, wicked.
Trolling everybody. It was funny.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, did you get if you'd have filmed that just to see the people's faces? What?
You know what I should have done, because people were taking it seriously, and I'm like, I'm having it on, mate. As much as everybody were ragging on the STs, there were people sat there playing on them, and like, oh, this is actually, I didn't realise that it could do this and that and the other.
Yeah, you know what? Myself and Richard Faulkner,
yeah,
we went to one of Ravi's events last year, Kickstart Auto, I think it was called, in Nottingham, and there was a whole table full of Atari stuff there.
Yeah,
and everybody was it's not an issue. No. I mean, I was an Atari fanboy for a bit myself.
Yeah.
But we rocked up and we got a table with a Spectrum Next on there. But everybody was like, "Whoa, what's this? It looks like an Amiga," because we were showing off TX 1696, which was the point of that game, to make it look like that type of Amiga or Mega Drive type game rather than Color Clash Spectrum. That's the whole point of the net. But yeah, it was brilliant. There's no animosity or anything there. They're just machines.
A lot of the time, I think the animosity is done as a joke, and people don't get the joke.
No, they don't, especially online, especially on social media. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, there's a bit of a thing with social media that I find, and some people might agree, some people might disagree. I don't think you can portray tone of voice in text format.
100%. Yeah, 100% with you there. You can't portray tone of voice. You're not looking at face expressions. All these natural cues that years and hundreds of years that we've developed. You can't do that with social media. No. So you could type something straight away, could get you back up. It does it to me.
Yeah.
Daily.
Definitely.
And depending on your current mood, it depends on your reply. And you can properly have some falling out with people. Yeah. And
sometimes you read something and you think, what the hell do you mean? What are you getting at?
Yeah. This is why I like, I mean, I've said it so many times. This is why I like to go to all these events.
Yeah, exactly.
And meet people. And then when you're talking to them online, because you've already met them, you know what you can get away with and what you can't get away with.
Yeah.
But when you're talking to complete strangers,
I also find, I don't know whether you do this, but if I've met someone in person, as long as I can remember them well enough, if I read a comment from them, I kind of read it in their voice. So I've got a cue about what that person is like, or what what that person's meaning. Whereas if I've never met them before, I haven't got that.
No, exactly that. You haven't got anything to reference to, have you, at all? It is very interesting. I like social media for, especially if you've got events and Twitch channels, YouTube channels, that kind of stuff. It's great for that. It's great for that. But for general, even groups, I mean, I've noticed on Facebook, I mean, I've done it myself. I've noticed on Facebook that there's all these subgroups now.
Yeah.
Which I like, because you can contain it, you can privatize it, and you can invite people who you've met.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It shouldn't be like that, but you're almost forced to do it. If you want to get out there and show what you're doing, that's almost what you need to do.
Yeah.
Because there's always some idiots in there who take the wrong.
They take the fanboyism a little bit too far, I think, some of them.
Yeah, they really do.
I'm a self-confessed Amiga fanboy, but I do understand and appreciate the limitations of the system, and that there were often better ports of games on other machines, and this, that, and the other. Nothing's perfect. Nothing in this world is perfect.
That's it. I mean, if one of my certain best friends is in one of the channels, you may see a bit of banter between us.
Yeah.
Where he'll say something like, "Oh, I've just seen this new Amiga game," and I'll go, "Amiga, what's that?" You know what I mean? And people who know me know that I know what an Amiga is.
Yeah.
But then you'll get people commenting, "Oh, it's this, don't you know what this is?"
Yeah.
And I love that.
Funny you should mention that. I was watching a YouTube video, and I don't know whether you're familiar with the guy Chinny Vision.
No.
Right, okay. He does a lot of comparisons of games on different platforms. It's quite well produced, but he has a second channel called Chinny Vision 2. And he was talking about how he trolled X, Twitter or X or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
He posted a mock-up picture of an Atari ST with Babylon 5 artwork and a picture of a 2-slot toaster with the word video toaster on the side of it, and gone, yeah, did you know that Babylon 5 was all done on Atari STs? The comment section, because he was scrolling through and showing everyone the comment section, it was the funniest thing you've ever seen. So many people taking it way too seriously.
Yes.
How do you know it was the Amiga? It's like, look at the picture. He's got a picture of a 2-slot kitchen toaster with video toaster written on the side of it. It's evidently a troll.
Oh man, some people just they deserve to be trolled, don't they? Some people.
Yeah, they do.
They really do.
I was watching this video and I was wetting myself with laughter. I'm like, that's the funniest thing. The only thing that annoyed me is that I didn't think of it myself.
Yeah, I remember seeing a post where somebody said, "I finally got myself a PS5," and it was when all the scalping was going on. Nobody could get them, and somebody had masking taped PS3 and PS2 together. Yeah, brilliant. I love it.
Funny you should mention that. I did a real life troll on someone. So this was ages ago. So do you remember when the Nintendo Switch was coming out? When the original Nintendo Switch was first announced, and there was a guy who I worked with, and he was really into his Nintendo stuff. But I mean, he's a great guy, a good laugh. And we used to talk a lot about gaming. But he's so Nintendo fanboy, proper through and through. And he's like, I really want to get a Nintendo Switch, this, that, and the other. So one day, I went into the storeroom and picked up a Netgear 48-port rack mount Switch off the shelf, printed off a big Nintendo badge, stuck it on it, put it in a box, wrapped it up in wrapping paper, and gave it to him as a Christmas present. Here, I've bought you a Nintendo Switch.
That's class. Yeah, that's funny. That is good. Brilliant.
But yeah. I'm like that sometimes. If I can think of a laugh, something like that. He took it in good spirits. He was laughing about it. He's like, good one.
So is the would you say the Amiga is your go-to machine now?
For a lot of things, yes. I go through sort of phases of what I'm into. At the moment, I'm on a massive Commodore 8-bit kick. But deep down, I think the Amiga is still the top machine for me, mostly because it's what I grew up with. It was my teenage years. I had one from 91 and till about 97, 98, when I was still using it as my main computer. And I learned a lot on that machine. I played a lot of games. I did a lot of D-Paint and Optimed and messing around in Amos, and I even had a printer and a word processor. It was my general purpose machine that I used for everything. So for me, from that point of view, that's where I learned concepts of like operating the systems. It was the first GUI environment I'd used, with a mouse and clicking icons, and I learned command line stuff and scripting in Amiga DOS and stuff like that. To me, I was always a bit of a geeky kid like that, but for me, it was the future. I'd never seen anything like that. I'd seen PCs, these big beige boxes that looked a bit crap, and then this, £300 computer seemed to be outperforming them from a graphics and sound point of view. Anyway, at the time.
Obviously,
100%. No things, went the other way once, expansions became cheaper and PCs became cheaper, of course. But
Well, they were used in music videos and all manner of things, weren't they?
Yeah. Well, like we said, the Babylon 5 thing as well, and then music videos. I mean, funny you should say that. There's a music video I always point to, and it's not an obvious one for people. Are you familiar with the song Killer by Adamski and Seal?
Yes.
Yeah, and you know the bit where it shows the guy dancing, it shows these tiles in the background, and as he's dancing, the tiles light up.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's not the same, and they're sort of like pushed on an angle like that, on like a 3D sort of thing. That, I look at that, and that was done in D-Paint 3, and I know that because it's the tutorial in the D-Paint 3 manual.
Ah, okay.
Oh my god, that's D-Paint 3.
I love D-Paint. Yeah, I did quite a few things on that on D-Paint. Yeah, I loved it.
What, you mean drawing immature pictures like most young lads did?
Well, I was trying to get back in the day. I was trying to get an artist job. And there was a place near me that I went for an interview there, and they weren't after the style that I was drawing at the time with D-Paint. But I took a lot of music discs with me as well, and they were after my music instead. But there was no. They just wanted my music. There was no position there. So I was like, well, so you just want me to give you all this and then go? I don't think so.
I think back in the day, there was a lot of people who were after just having things and not, not wanting to pay for it, get things as cheap as possible.
Well, it was the days of public domain, wasn't it? And, copy this disc and share this disc and spread this disc. I do miss that, to be honest.
I do miss that room full of people with a blank floppy disk, and every 1 minute 10 seconds you hear the dying noise of Xcopy Pro.
Yeah, and this is what I'd got in my head for these Amiga meets. Is it just full of people with Xcopy running, copying everybody's? Because that just doesn't happen anymore, does it?
No, it doesn't. Do you know what? We should do that. We should actually do
proper old school meet.
Yeah.
So no Raspberry Pis, no hard drives, just literally everything on floppies.
None of us use floppies anymore. Most of us are using like Gotex and CF card adapters and all sorts of stuff.
Oh, mate, I still use floppies, even though they're dying.
I still use floppies, and do you know what? I still use tapes on some of my AGood.
Well, yeah, it's part of my Spectrum Next show using tape. So,
do you know what? I'm going to say something. Actually, here's a question for you, and see what you think. And some people are going to say that they think this is BS, but this is my own personal experience.
Yeah, go on.
So if we take cartridges out the equation and leave ourselves with magnetic media, which do you think is the ones that are lasting the longest and turning out the most reliable?
Well, it's tape, because they still use tape, don't they?
Yeah, it is.
They still use tape. They still use these reels of tape for backup purposes. Yeah. So yeah, definitely tape.
The floppy disks are failing like crazy, but the tapes, a lot of them still work. Those pictures I posted on the Bapstacade group with my C16 and that big cassette box with all those tapes. Every single tape works.
Yeah, wow.
Tape works, and they're as old as me. Or nearly
some older.
Possibly. It says something, doesn't it? It does say something about that kind of media and things. And it's the same with the Spectrum and the Amstrad and all the other machines that I use tapes on. They generally tend to be very reliable.
Yeah, I think it's just all down to whether they've been rewound properly, kept in the box, the environment it's been. Unfortunately, most things go up into a wet, damp loft, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I definitely stay away from doing things like that. But
you do now, but we've all learned the hard way, haven't we?
Yeah. But like the floppy disks, they're a nightmare. Especially Amiga discs. I don't know what it is with Amiga floppy disks. They tend to be so unreliable. And I wonder whether it's the way they pack that extra bit of storage space in with the slightly, odd track sector layout and things like that just makes them less reliable. I don't know. I'm clutching with that, but so
yeah,
annoying. You try and play a game and it's like volume such and such has a read-write error. Oh no.
Yeah, I've got quite. I mean, I don't know if you can see behind me here in this bit here. There's quite a few boxed Amiga games there, and I haven't tested them in such a long time, so I don't even know if they work.
Yeah,
it'd be such a shame.
See, I went through a lot of my boxed games, and they, as well as having the original discs, they've got a backup copy in with the box with them in case the originals don't work.
Yeah. How long ago was your backup copy done, though? And how old was the disc that you put the backup onto?
Well, I don't know how old the discs that I put the backups onto, but the backups were only done a few years ago. So,
right, okay.
A few years ago, I just went through this thing of buying up as many good condition, new old stock floppy disks and backing stuff up. I've got one of those grease weasel devices, so in a lot of cases, I can actually write the original version of the disk, including copy protection routines and everything, back to a floppy in a lot of cases.
Right. So wouldn't that have been nice back in the day?
Oh, wouldn't it have just? Wouldn't it have just?
Instead of using Nibble, trying to use Nibble copy, and what was the other one? DOS copy plus. And,
oh, God. Yeah. Oh, those are fun times. And you borrow your mates' games, and even though you knew they wouldn't copy, you would try it anyway just to see.
Yeah, of course you would. Of course you would.
Got away with it a couple of times as well. Like, oh, that game's actually copied.
Yeah, but yeah, depending on whether they could be bothered to put copy protection on there.
Yeah.
But so, I was going to say, what do you do as for a job then, Duncan?
I actually work in IT. I'm a cloud server engineer, so I deal with like servers and Microsoft Azure and SCCM Exchange, all the Microsoft shizzle. So I've always been interested in computers and in IT, and I've not always been a server engineer. I've done desk side support and I've done service desk work before, and I've even done field engineering work and hardware repair. But I do quite like what I do. So
yeah.
It's interesting, and you learn about the new technologies, and you get to see the new operating systems that are coming out, and you get your hands on with them before you've probably got it at home, and and you get to see how a lot of the back end stuff works. And I'll tell you where it is useful. If something goes wrong in your day-to-day personal life, on computer related, you kind of got an understanding of what's wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you work on the other side in your day-to-day job, so you tend to know where it's falling over. Most of the time, not always.
What do you?
There's a lot of Google though.
Well, Google's your friend, isn't it? Of course it is. Of course it is. What do you think of the situation with Microsoft almost forcing people to go onto Windows 11?
Do you know what? Some people will disagree with this, but my opinion is I think it's absolutely horrendous. And it's not so much the forcing people to go onto Windows 11. It's more about things like the requirements and the artificial minimum system requirements, requiring TPM 2.0, requiring an 8th gen Intel processor or above. There are PCs that are perfectly capable of running Windows 11. If you use tricks to bypass the checks, it will install and it will run perfectly well. But Microsoft, by what they're doing, they are putting millions of machines, in fact, more than that, probably billions of machines in landfill.
Yeah.
I think that is totally irresponsible.
It really is. It really is. I mean, I think it's October support stops unless you want to pay for it for the next 3 years or something. I read.
It is.
And there's a different tier depending whether it's educational, a corporate, or home user base.
Yeah, there are ways around that as well, because obviously I'm not advocating for breaking Microsoft's terms of licensing conditions, but of course not. If you know how to Google it, there are enterprise IoT LTSC versions that you can use that are supported till 2031. So that's an option.
Yeah.
The other option is you do what I do, and I've gone Linux. I've gone
Yes.
Linux away.
Yeah, I've dabbled with installation of various ones, Ubuntu and Mint over the years. Played around with it for a little bit, and then gone back to Windows. I think it was interesting. I think it was a few years back. Again, I installed a particular flavor of Linux and installed Steam, installed Half-Life 2 Deathmatch, played that, and it just all worked. And I was like, wow, okay,
that's interesting. With Steam, Proton emulation layer and all that sort of stuff. It's all come a really long way.
And it does make me wonder if you just use your PC for games, and as we know, Steam OS is Linux based, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And they might have their OS available soon. It does make you think, well, I'm just going to go over to Steam OS or a version of Linux and run Steam, and just use that rather than messing around with Windows. I mean, at the end of the day, you could always dual partition your drive anyway, can't you?
Boot it, or you can VM it. I mean, and I know some people will say, "Oh, why would you VM it?" But a lot of the virtual machine tools now, you could put a second graphics card in your machine. You can make it pass that second graphics card directly to the VM, so you get the 3D acceleration, you get the DirectX and all that sort of stuff.
Is that the new Cloud Azure technology?
No, it's existed on Linux for years. It's PCI pass through, where you can put a card in a slot and you can say, I will pass that slot directly through to the VM. It's been in existence for a long time, but people have been
interesting.
What's the use case for it? But this is the use case.
That's the use case for it. Yeah,
you pass your graphics card through. LTT did a YouTube video on this, Linus Tech Tips. They built one machine with a product called Unraid. It's a virtualization platform, a bit like VMware, but it's a little bit more open source. It's still somewhat proprietary. And they filled it full of graphics cards, connected. I think they had 4 graphics cards, 4 keyboards, 4 mice, 4 network cards, etc., all in this one box. And they passed each individual set of graphics card, network card, keyboard, mouse to one VM directly. So they basically had 4 machines on one physical box.
Wow. Okay.
The only thing it was sharing was CPU and RAM. And storage. But everything else was...
Just think of the money companies could save by doing things like that.
Yeah.
Because they don't... I've noticed... I mean, a company I work for, they just do not use virtual machines at all. And it blows my mind. No.
I thought everywhere did it. I thought everywhere was VMing it.
They're physical machines. And the thing is, there's a lot of machines that aren't going to be Windows 11 compliant. So it's like you say, there's going to be a lot of machines out there that are going to end up in landfill.
Yeah.
Unless somebody takes hold of them and says, no, I can sort myself a nice Quake or Doom, LAN setup there with these machines, because
my other problem with Windows 11 is the forcing features on people, forcing the use of AI, forcing the you must log in with a Microsoft account, all these sort of things. And I'm not saying don't have these features. Don't force it on people. Let them opt in.
Yeah, it was like
telemetry as well.
It was like when they used to force you using Internet Explorer, and they never advertised any other browser, and they had to change that, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I see. I was a Netscape boy back then. Even I recognised way back then that Netscape was the browser, and Firefox and then Chrome. Yeah,
Netscape I used back when it was my first PC, actually, Pentium 120. Yeah, I remember Netscape, but to be honest, you didn't really have anything to compare it to. It was just that's the browser, and that was it. And I think I was on AOL 2 as well. Yeah, AOL 2 and ICQ, and yeah, it was brilliant. I loved it.
See, we've gone so far away from that form of internet now that it's it's crazy. It's
28K bloody modem, and
28. You were posh. I had a 14.4K. I did.
Yeah, it had a 28. I think it was 28.8K data flex.
Yeah,
first machine I had. And then I think eventually I upgraded it to a US Robotics 33.6 or something like that, some weird speed.
Yeah, those had a really loud speaker, those US Robotics.
Oh, they were great.
Hear it dialing up from the other side of the house.
It's in my brain permanently, etched in there, like Spectrum games. They're in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But, no, it was. It's weird how I don't know if you've done it yourself. I feel as though I've gone complete full circle. It's like I'm known in the community as like a retro stroke Spectrum Next ambassador almost, I suppose. I love the stuff, but I'd moved on from all that years and years. As soon as I had my Pentium 120, all I was doing after that was building PCs and building PCs for people, and my gaming collection was just all PCs. And it wasn't until Elite Dangerous came out, it sort of connected me back to Elite, which was that connection of retro. And then obviously the Spectrum Next came out, and then threw me into this world that I was already part of. But there's a community. So I don't know if that happened to you.
No, it's a little bit different for me, actually. So when we got our first PC, I was excited for a lot of the PC titles, but I remember going to a local computer fair, and when you get those stalls of all those discs with the printed covers, and you knew they were probably not very legit, but they had all sorts of wares and software on. I stumbled across a disc that was an Amiga emulated CD. And this was back in the late 90s, so you can tell how bad Amiga emulation probably was back then. But I dropped a $5 on this disc because it was like a double disc set, and it was just full chock-a-block filled to the brim with Amiga software and the emulators and everything. And I got into Amiga emulating back then in the late 90s.
Wow, okay.
And then come around 2003, I'd moved out from my parents, and I was at work, and I was chatting to one of the guys, and we were talking about like computers that we'd used in the past and what our favourites were. And I'd said about the Amiga, and he goes, "That's interesting. I've got a load of Amiga stuff that I'm looking at getting rid of." I'm like, "Really? How much do you want for it?" And he goes, "I don't know, 30 quid. I go, "Let me come round and have a look." So I go around. And bear in mind, you're going to laugh at this because this is a sign of what it was like back in 2003. There was this huge, big, massive cardboard box. And when I opened it, there was 2 Amiga 1200s, a CD32, an Atari 520 STFM, and there was a second cardboard box that was full to the brim of discs of games and stuff for both systems. And there's even some CD32 titles in there. I paid 30 quid for all of that.
Jesus, so he's kicking himself now.
Yeah, I bet.
The CD32 on its own is probably worth about 350 quid, isn't it?
Yeah. And then later on, do you remember Game Station when they used to sell?
Yeah.
And it was when I lived in Blackpool, and I kept walking past, and they had a Spectrum Plus 2 in the window with 3 games, and they wanted like 70, 80 quid for it. I'm like, that's ridiculous. And then it went down to 60 quid, and it went down to 50 quid. And then about 3 months later, it was still in the window, but the price ticket had been removed from it. So I nipped in and I said, "That Spectrum you got in the window, how much do you want for that?" And he goes, "Hold right there, I'll just go and get the manager." And the manager comes out. I'm like, this is weird. He goes, "Look, we've got a load of Spectrum stuff. You can have it for 20 quid, the lot of it if you want." I'm like, right, okay. How much are we talking? He goes, do you drive? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, we'll fill the boot of your car with it. So I brought
Wow.
my car around the back of the game station. There was a +2, a grey +2, a black +2, a +3, and then well, about as many games as you can think of on tape. Loads of it. It's like, I'm like, there is no way if I just paid 20 quid and got all this. I got out of there pretty quick. I thought, I'm leaving before they change their mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah,
so was this the start of your? Was this the start of your collection then? Was it?
Yeah, it was. This was the early 2000s. Yeah, it was the start of my collection.
Yeah.
And then I went off, and I was always interested in the computers more. Even though we did have a SNES at home, because my brother had a SNES at one point, I held off on the consoles a bit. It was always the computers I was more interested in.
Yeah.
And then later on, I thought, well, I've got the computers that I want. I'll get a SNES and a Mega Drive, because I like that 16-bit era, and I played a lot on my brother's SNES, and I played a lot on mates' Mega Drives. So, yeah. And that's what got me into all that. And it weren't until about 2008, and I was on the Retro Gamer magazine forum, and there was a guy on there saying, I'm going to do a retro event. And it was quite a travel from me, but I was willing to do it. You know, I was like, yeah, I'll turn up. Because I thought, well, I'll meet some of the people off the forum, you know, it'd be a laugh. And I turned up, and bear in mind, nobody had ever met me in person before. And I'd said I was going to bring a PlayStation 1 and an Amiga 1200. So I turned up, and I walked in the door. I didn't know a single person. I walked in the door with my 1200 under my arm. And they're like, oh, you must be Woody. They knew straight away. As soon as I saw an Amiga, they knew I was. And a lot of the people I met at that first event back then, I'm still very good friends with now. It's become my main social scene.
Yeah, it's good for that, isn't it? It really is. It really is.
I've made a lot of good friends through this. A lot of good friends.
Yeah, and that's what's important. Not the stuff that goes on Facebook and all the other various.
That's just rubbish.
Yeah, it's going to the events and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Are there any events that you're planning to do this year, or are you just waiting for the nod?
I just see what comes up and make my way there. There is a Commodore Day event at the Northwest Computer Museum that I might be going to. I just need to make sure that I've got that day free, but I'm looking at that. Then there's obviously the Yorkshire Amiga groups and Lincolnshire Amiga group events. I'll be doing those. And then it's just whatever comes down the pipeline. I've not thought about Zap Live or Crash Live yet. They're not off the menu, but I'll see what I'm doing a little bit nearer the time.
Yeah. Zap, I'm not sure if I'm going to do Zap this year. Crash, I'll definitely be doing Crash. I'll definitely be doing that. I mean, that's November anyway, so that's I don't even want to think about November yet. There's an event coming up for Elite Dangerous, because Elite Dangerous was my passion game for the best part of 8 years, and I've had 2 years off, and I've started playing it again. But I used to do some of the cons for that, and some of the retro rooms. But another guy took on the mantle of doing an it's called Elite Meet.
Oh, right, okay, that sounds cool.
And it's just a huge group of people who play the game and just have fun, and they take loads of retro machines and all that kind of stuff, you know. So I might do that this year, and take Techno Shed with me as well. But I'm not sure what's happening with Revival. Have you been over to Retro Realm yet?
Yes,
over to the arcade.
I went for the soft opening, and I was. Oh
yes, you did, and I didn't see you, did I? I can't believe that.
Yeah. I even posted I was going down. It's like,
that's bizarre. but I went down there with my son, and we even had a quick walk around the only thing is I had a phone call off my parents, and they'd basically they'd been doing some decorating, and they locked themselves in the living room, So I had to go and do an emergency free your parents moment. So that was mental, because I was talking to Craig Marlowe, and Craig Turner most of the night, and I was sat down with Jim Bagley. I was having a chat with. So I can't. Yeah. How the hell did I miss you?
I would. You know what? I went in, had my food, and then I spent the rest of the time just playing on every single thing that were there.
Yeah, he's done a good job, hasn't he? He's done a good job.
I was like a kid in a toy shop, and I loved those the artwork on the walls as well. That's really good. Yeah,
it's a local.
To do them. It's like I said to Craig. I said, "Did you hire Banksy or something?"
Yeah, it was a local graffiti artist, wasn't he? He's done a great job. Really has.
Local graffiti artist, it's Banksy.
Yeah, Banksy, yeah. He's the real Banksy, really. Nobody knows. Yeah. All right then, mate. You mentioned to me a few weeks back that you're working on a project. Do you want to talk about that?
I've got a couple of projects, but I'll talk about.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
So this particular one is I was always really interested in the disc magazines you used to get for the Amiga back in the day. I mean, they existed on other platforms as well. But basically, for those who don't know, you got a floppy disk, you put it in, it booted up into an environment where you had a list of articles, and you clicked on the one you wanted to read, and you read it. And it had they used to have artwork and music on the discs as well. And it was all very scene-related stuff related to that. I've been toying with the idea of making my own disc mag, and I knocked together I used a bit of off-the-shelf software that already existed, but the source code was available, so I had a look at the source code and did a few tweaks to it to make it work a little bit more how I wanted it to work. And it's all written in Amos, which I know a bit of Amos anyway, so that's another part to it. And I've put a couple of articles on it for a few things, but my focus about it is not going to be like what other people think. It's more going to be about personal experiences in the retro scene. It's more going to be opinions, me reviewing something that I've tried, me talking about an event that I've gone to, me talking about when I went round my mate's house and we spent 3 days pissing around with old DOS PCs, that sort of thing, and it's going to be my uncut opinion. So if I think something's not very good, it'll be, I'm sorry, I'm not into this, it's not very good.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I'm trying to work out getting some content on it. I've got about 3 or 4 articles, and the disc is still like only about 20-30% full. I'm like, damn, I've got a lot of stuff to put on this.
Right. So you making calls out to various groups and whatever in the community?
I haven't done yet, but I am toying with the idea of putting the feelers out if people want a platform to talk about stuff. And although I'm doing it on the Amiga, it's not necessarily Amiga focused. It's just retro focused. It can be anything retro focused. It doesn't even need to necessarily be computers. It could be about your old hi-fi equipment that you've just got into if you wanted a platform for it to be put on. It's more about having a platform where you can write an article, tell people about what what you're into, or tell people about a game you like, or an album that you like, or a film that you like, and be free from social media whilst doing it. And I know it's gonna be a very niche thing. I've spoke to a few people about this before, and they've said, "Oh, why would anybody read that? Or why would anybody be interested in that?" I don't care whether anybody is interested in that or not. I don't care if it reaches 1,000 people or it reaches 2 people. It's just the project, just a way for me to get my thoughts out in text.
Yeah, I think sometimes you've got to have that attitude. If it's something that, I mean, I didn't start the YouTube channels and whatever and this channel.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted to be this famous YouTuber. At the end of the day, I've got a full-time job, got family.
Yeah.
I just enjoy talking to people who are into, like-minded, geeky, nerdy stuff, we'll say. And I was playing games anyway, so I was like, well, I might as well just do something. And if I can build a community or be part of something, and enjoy it, then great.
And exactly. I mean, I've looked at the whole YouTube thing, and I'm thinking, well, YouTube's kind of a bit oversaturated. There's lots of people doing that sort of content. You've got to have a unique selling point to stand out. You've got to have something different to everybody else. And everything I looked at, I'm like, I don't think I've got that unique thing to stand out. But then a few years back during COVID, I did an article for the do you know the Arcade Coin-Op book by Grey Fox that came out?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it.
I wrote the section on Street Fighter 2 in that book. So,
okay.
So
interesting.
That was my first taste of doing a little bit of writing. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm an expert writer. Of course, I'm not. You know, my spelling and grammar is probably not all that. But from my point of view, it's just something I enjoy doing. It's like talking about it, but talking about it in a text form and putting it out there. And people don't have to be present at the time I'm saying it. They can look at it later.
I think at the end of the day, even if you had like 10, 15, 20 people who appreciate what you're doing, I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I was the same as, again, with the stuff that I did. If I'd got, five people watching my videos, I was like, oh, wow, that's brilliant. You don't need thousands. It'd be nice if there was, but you don't need it. As long as you're enjoying what you're doing and there's a few people out there that are appreciating what you're doing, then it doesn't matter, does it? Doesn't matter at all. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But that sounds really interesting.
Like with me, there'd probably be some memes on the disc as well. Converted to Amiga if IFF format.
I'd be upset if there wasn't. I really would. Are there any sites that you're thinking about putting this? I mean, are you going to do it in a .adf format?
Yeah, it would be an ADF disk image. And to be honest, the only place I could really think of sharing it are either amongst groups on Facebook, or I've not looked at it yet, but itch.io.
Yeah, itch.io. Yeah.
This wouldn't be something that I want money for. This would be a passion project.
Well, the thing is,
it doesn't necessarily mean it would be a regular thing as well. It'd just be when I get the time. It might not be a monthly thing to start off with. It might be as and when I can get the time to do it.
The thing is with itch.io, you can put stuff on there for free, but you can give people the option. Look, if you appreciate what I do and you want to buy me a coffee or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to chuck us a quid. Then there you go. Just click on here and it's appreciated. And I think I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No,
at all. There's nothing wrong with that. Because that's another weird one with socials, and I haven't gone down this route yet. But when people have Patreon schemes and things like that, sometimes I think, that's not bad. It depends how good the content is, and because at the end of the day, somebody's got to make this stuff and spend time on it. So it depends on the quality of the stuff, and it depends on the tiers they're asking for. Yeah. If you're going to get a free, let's say you're going to get a free game out of it by paying £5 a month, then why not?
Yeah.
But if you're just going to get a shout out, then either make it free or
you're going to put your name on the ending credits that whiz past at like turbo speed, so you don't get to see it anyway.
Yeah, that's it. They put things like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Some people love that. They love to see. I've had people on my Twitch channel on a Tuesday when I've been doing my Spectrum Next stuff, and they've literally waited to the end just so they could see the name. Yeah. Scroll up and they go, "Oh, there's me." They love it. It's that generation, I think. Yeah. So
that's not something that isn't. I'd rather something more tangible.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just put the credits on there anyway because it's just something. It's like an outro. I love intros and outros. I always have done.
I do if they're. Yeah, to be fair, I do. To be fair.
Yeah, I do love intros and outros.
Gimmicky ones as well. Some of the best ones I've seen are some of the retro YouTubers who do like basic listings. So they run a program and it's got a basic listing where it's printing out the names and the credits. Like, that's pretty cool,
I do, and I think I think that it comes from the appreciation of Amiga demos back in the day, because that, or cracked software where you'd have a little intro by Fairlight or something. Yeah, they were awesome.
Sometimes them crack throws were better than the damn game.
Oh yeah, you absolutely. You just load up the disc, wouldn't you? Just to listen to sanction music or something.
I always remember I think it's the Burning Rubber demo, Burning Rubber disc for the Amiga, and it's got a Skid Row intro, but it's got Utah Saints track on the. I mean, it's got a Utah Saints track in the game as well, I think, but it's got a Utah Saints track on the crack throw as well. And I'm like, that's pretty sick.
So how far are you into your project then? Your Amiga? Have you only just started? You said
I've only just started. It's at the beginning stages. I mean, I'm also going to be looking for especially help with things like the music, with the soundtrack and mods, and maybe a little bit of artwork here and there, because that's not my forte really.
Okay, I might be able to help you out on that.
We'll have a chat about that then.
Charge you 10p.
Do you know what the funny thing about it is? If this takes off and if it gets really popular, and if there's demand for it, I might look at porting it to other systems. I might look at doing the same on the ST, or even on some of the 8-bit machines. Because do you know what? The other thing that I remembered as well, I've got a couple of tapes computing with the CPC, and it's like a disc mag, but it's on tape. It's a tape mag, and you load the tape and it loads through the articles, and I'm like, that's pretty novel.
I really do think people appreciate stuff like that now.
Yeah
because it's been lost, hasn't it? And it's like the Amiga scene. It's all accelerators and Raspberry Pis and
now you see,
modern desktops.
I've gone the opposite way with my Amiga stuff. I downsized my collection, and I've kind of downgraded to everything to like Gotex and floppy disks, and I've got a couple with hard drives with like CF card hard drives in, but they're not accelerated up. They're like 2 meg chip RAM, 2 meg fast RAM type machines. You know, we're like proper, keeping it 68,000. That's what it's about. Yeah,
I think the appeal is the restriction, because we've all got phones that are more powerful than all the machines we had back in the day. You know, most of us have got a decentish PC, so you don't need a retro machine to suddenly become a PC. And you mentioned about getting on the internet with the Amiga. I like the idea.
I used to do it.
As long as you're connecting to sites that you can only get via the Amiga. I don't want to be going to PC sites on the Amiga. Now, if somebody can create certain, I don't know what you would call it, well, you know, certain web pages or what that are Amiga only, then that's cool. So it becomes its own little intranet. Now that'd be cool.
I think that's why things like BBSs are still.
That's it. That was what I was trying to think of. BBSs,
I think that's why BBSs are still a thing in the retro community, because of that. Because the other thing as well that I'm looking at doing, so I don't know how much in the Amiga scene you're involved, but there's a lot of these pre-done, pre-set up workbench packs. So if you're not familiar with installing everything by hand, you just download a pre-done pack, install it on your Amiga, and you've got workbench, you've got WHD load, you've got programs and music players and this, that, and the other. But they're all designed for 1200s with Kickstart 3.0, 3.1 or higher. Or sometimes if you do get one that's designed for an older Amiga, it's still a Kickstart 2.0 thing for like a 600 or 500.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I want to do a 1.3 one. Classic blue, white, and orange color scheme, you know, good old 1.3 A500 style. And that's something that I've been working on, and I've actually got quite far with that. It's just needs a few tweaks to make it a little bit more, or shall I say, a little bit less crash prone, because 1.3 is generally a bit crash prone sometimes.
So stock Amiga 500, 1.3. Would you go as
you'd still need a hard drive
Oh, okay.
maybe like 1 meg, because there won't be enough RAM on a 512 meg machine. But the machine I'm running it on has got like 1 meg chip and 1 meg chip and 2 meg fast. So it's pretty minimal specs. It's still 68,000, and it's all 1.3.
How easy is it to obtain a hard drive for an Amiga 500 though?
A lot easier now, because you've got things like the InDivision ACA 500 and ACA 500 Plus, and they're just a little board that plugs on the side slot on the side, and it gives you 2 compact flash card slots. One of them,
see.
One of them takes an Amiga format flash card, and the other one takes either an Amiga format or a FAT32 PC format.
Right, because the 600 and the 1200 already had the slot, didn't it? Yeah. Right. Okay.
The ACA 500 and the ACA 500 Plus. The original, the 500, gives you 2 meg of fast RAM, and the 500 Plus one gives you 8 meg of fast RAM. So immediately you've got some fast RAM. That's the biggest problem with the Amigas. It's not. I don't care about the CPU acceleration. It's all about 68,000. It's all about OCS, ECS. It's having a little bit more RAM. 1 meg is a little bit restrictive. 2, 3 meg, it's usable then as a pretty decent machine, because a lot of software was made to run within that 1 megabyte, and when you've got a little bit extra RAM on top of that, you can do a little bit more with those pieces of software. So suddenly the Amiga is quite usable. Something that's only a 7 megahertz 2 meg machine is suddenly capable of doing stuff that PCs of the time could also do in a way. From a software point of view, you'd be able to run your word processors, your music applications, your graphics applications, and you'd be able to store more frames of animation. A 1 meg A500 with dpaint 3, you could get about 5 frames of animation in RAM and you were done. Sometimes a bit more depending on color depth and screen resolution, but suddenly when you got 3 or 4 meg, you can store a lot more. You can make it a lot more usable.
That sounds really interesting, mate. Really does. And will your the first project you were talking about, will that work on stock?
That's designed. The only requirement is 1 megabyte, which most A500 users have got the trapdoor.
Of course.
It might run on 0.5 meg. I've not tried it.
And if they've got a plus, they're okay anyway.
The idea is I want it to run on the lowest common, or as close to the lowest common denominator as possible. And I've always been like that with everything I used to do. Even when I used to make stuff in Amos back in the day, I always used to design it that it would run on as minimum as possible.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, that's really good, because you're serving that space that isn't being talked about or used. So that's really good, and that's certainly going to be good for all the Amiga events that you do as well.
And it's probably why I like things like the VIC-20 and the Commodore 16, because they were so limited, and it's like, well, you get people are pushing them machines to crazy lengths that you wouldn't expect.
Absolutely.
And there is a third project as well, and this is mostly complete. It only needs a couple of things done on it.
Okay.
So, you're familiar with the Commodore SX64, aren't you? The portable one with the built-in screen and.
Not as much, no.
But you're aware of its existence.
Yes. Yeah.
It's basically like, I was going to say a laptop, but it's way too big to be a laptop. It was a luggable Commodore 64. It had a built-in disk drive and a built-in tiny CRT monitor and a detachable keyboard. It weighed a bloody ton.
Right.
But they're very expensive. So what I've done, with the help of a friend of mine who knocked together the case, I've got the Pi SX64.
Okay.
So it's a Raspberry Pi 2. Inside inside a 3D printed case, which looks like and is reminiscent of an SX64, and it's got a little built-in flat screen, and I put BMC64 on it, which is a bare metal Commodore 64 emulator, and configured it so it just power it on, it just boots up. So it is basically like a SX64 Mini.
Oh wow! And I take it you load your software through an SD card.
SD card. Yeah. Put all the software on the SD card.
Oh, that'd be cool to see. And how about speaker output?
That's what I need to work on next. It's got a headphone jack at the moment on the front of it, but I need to look at amplifier options, put an amplifier and a little speaker in. Because one of the things I really wanted to make it into was a SID jukebox. So I just sit there and play the SID tunes. To have it on the side of my desk and kick the tunes off.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If you could take apart a little decent speaker, and somehow
it's fine.
Work with that.
It's pretty cramped inside that thing. Originally, it was using a Bluetooth keyboard, but I kept having problems with the Bluetooth dongle. So I got one of those Raspberry Pi keyboards, the small keyboards, and plugged that in. And that's about approximately the same size as the front panel on the SX64. So on this mini SX64, so you get the idea of size.
Yeah. Does it have to be a Raspberry Pi 2 though? Can it not be a Raspberry Pi 0?
It could have been. It's just what I had kicking around.
Okay, I'm just thinking size-wise for you.
I'm one of these people when it comes to projects, and I look at doing a project. I'm not looking at doing a project with things I've got to buy lots of. I'm looking at doing projects
what you've got.
I've already got.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. You can always do that. You proof of concept, and then
I think the original Raspberry Pi, the original Raspberry Pi Model B would probably run BMC64.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Interesting project, mate. And you're saying that's nearly done?
That's near completion. Physically, it's all done. I need to get more software loaded up on the SD card and get some sort of speaker built in. It's getting a built-in speaker that's the big thing. Yeah,
I'm wondering if you could put a Bluetooth dongle in there as well, and so you can have just wireless headphones then.
Yeah, I could, but like I say, I was using a Bluetooth keyboard on it originally, and I was having all sorts of issues with the Bluetooth.
Okay.
I don't know whether the casing is interfering with it, or whether it was just because it was cheap Chinese rubbish.
Right. So you can connect a keyboard up, USB, I imagine. Yeah.
Keyboard, yeah. The Raspberry Pi keyboards, the ones that are basically like a Pi 400, but without the Pi in it.
The white ones. Yeah.
Yeah. I just use one of them.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I just use one of them, and because it's got like a USB hub in it, I can daisy chain like controllers off it and stuff like that. And
okay, that'd be cool to see at one of the events. That will.
I do need to get that at an event. I did take a picture of it and whack it on Facebook ages ago. I mean, we're talking like over a year ago.
Oh, shove it in the group. That'd be interesting to see. Yeah,
the group because
anything like that, all your projects, get them in that group, and we can promote them and share them and do all that kind of stuff. So that'd be really good. All right then, mate.
Big things. And I suppose the other thing is very new acquisition to the collection. I've got myself a Commodore 64 Maxi. The full size of the 64 Maxi. Got one of those.
Is that the retro games one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got C64s, but I say I got C64s. I had about 3 or 4 C64s. I've got one working one now. I've had to go through a massive repair-a-thon, and I thought, and a friend of mine had this retro games, the C64 Maxi, the full-size one. I'm like, I'm going to get that because if this remaining 64 dies, I'm going to want some.
Yeah,
stuff on.
I've got the genuine bread bin, and I've got the mini.
Yeah.
Have you looked inside the Maxi? Is it just a Raspberry Pi?
It's the same hardware. It's just like it's mostly hollow with a few weights in the bottom.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Well, I think
what's the keyboard like? The
keyboard's pretty nice. It's really nice to type on. The keys are very reminiscent of the original 64 bread bin keys, but they are quite a bit lighter. It doesn't feel like you're typing on it does feel like you're typing on a 64, but not quite. So
you've got to have owned one to know. Yeah.
If I was to go back to my C16 days, the Commodore 16, there's a few different revisions of them. They all look the same, but later on they cheaped out and they used a cheaper, thinner case and they used cheaper keyboard keys. The C64 Maxi feels like the cheaper keyboard keys of the C64.
I've got you.
Yeah, so they're a lot lighter weight, and they're also not compatible because I saw a video online. Somebody pulled one of the keycaps off, and it's not the same, fitting as what a bread bin 64 keycaps were. Because if it was, I'd have just swapped them over and be done with it.
Yeah. All right then, mate. That's fantastic. We can do like a little quick fire round now.
Yeah.
Simple questions.
Yeah.
Favorite computer?
Amiga 500 plus.
There we go. Favorite console?
Oh, this is so difficult. So difficult. I'm torn between the Mega Drive and the SNES.
Just say Mega Drive.
Yeah, I'd say Mega Drive. the game I like the most is available on both systems, and
they were both good machines.
Yeah, Street Fighter 2. I've always waxed lyrical that I think the Mega Drive version plays better. So.
Oh, now that's interesting. You see, I was a SNES
nicer, but
I was a SNES player for that.
Better. Yeah. SNES, the Mega Drive version, better frame rate.
Yeah.
Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the SNES. Yeah, here's the thing. This is where you show Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the SNES. Balrog stage, because it's got lots of stuff going on in the background. Pick a character like Ryu, Ken, or Guile, or anybody with a projectile, and throw projectile after projectile. The SNES version, the frame rate will tank.
Oh, okay.
The version will keep up.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Favorite movie?
Terminator, the first one.
Nice choice. Yeah. I know that's a difficult question. I mean, if I got asked these questions, I would find it impossible because I like so many games, so many consoles, so many computers, so many movies. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
But that's a good one, Terminator. Yeah. Favorite TV show?
Oh, I don't watch a lot of TV, so it's a bit of a difficult one for me. But this is going to get a bit of some laughs, actually. Years ago, when I was younger, I used to love The Bill.
Oh, The Bill, okay.
Yeah, I used to love The Bill.
Proper 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, did it carry on into the 90s?
It carried on. The last episode was in 2010.
Oh, Christ, okay. I just remember it as being an 80s show.
No, it was on through the 80s, the 90s, and right away into the 2000s. It finished in 2010.
That was a show I never watched. Never watched The Bill. No, I was like that kind of genre. I suppose you could say they were like late 70s shows, like things like Cagney and Lacey and
See, I like all those as well. I like
Chips. Oh, I love Chips. Chips was awesome.
And I like things like Minder and Only Fools and Horses and all those.
Oh, that's class. Yeah.
I suppose Only Fools and Horses is up there. That's probably
Yeah, I don't watch any mainstream TV now.
Joint first place, The Bill and Only Fools and Horses. There you go.
Yeah, different genres, but I've got yeah.
It's that era of TV I like.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Okay, then, mate. Well, that's the end of the podcast.
Right.
Thanks for doing this.
That's all right.
With me, you're the first of the year.
Wow.
First of 2025.
We did say for ages we were going to do this. So
we did. But hopefully get to see you at some of the events this year.
To get down to RCM when they're a bit more back in the swing of things, because obviously flooding and that. And I was really gutted to see that because they're not long got in that new premises as well. And then it's heartbreaking for them. And to be honest, I will put in the links regarding the computer museum in Leicester. I think there's still a Fund Me page up because they're going to need some donations to because it's charity run. And they're going to need some donations to. Mention this. I spoke to Jason, who I saw at Lincolnshire Amiga group yesterday.
Jason,
he was showing me the pictures of what it's currently like, and I was like, oof. And they've got a lot of stuff in container units outside the building in the car park area, and they've had to move into that room that was the arcade bit at the back, and after cleaning that out. And yeah, it's horrific what's happened there.
It really is. It really is. But it could have been worse. It could have been worse. It's still going. They've got a good community behind them. They've got some good, volunteers and whatever. Yeah. So I'm sure once it's all dried out and the decorating's been done again, and hopefully the money raised will pay for all the carpets and whatever again. They can get back to normal by hopefully by, I'll say the middle of the year, but it might be the end of the year.
Yeah.
But I will put some links in the description for that. Okay, so just quickly, is there any shout outs you'd like to do?
Yeah, I was going to say about that actually. Well, one of them we've already said, and that's obviously RCM and Andy Spencer and the team and what they've been doing there. But I'd also like to give a massive shout out to Craig, the two Craigs at Retro Round. What they've done with the Retro Round, when I went down for the soft opening, was really good. It's got a lot of potential there, and anybody who's in that area, if you're into that sort of thing, you have to go there. You've got to visit it. The food's pretty good as well. I was impressed with the food. The artwork on the wall is brilliant. It's the kind of place I wanted to go to as a kid.
Yes.
Yeah. It is like that. Don't get me wrong. We've got other places. We've got Arcade Club and Retro Dome and all these other places. But it's nice to see something in that area. Even though I'm not based in that area, I lived, Northampton for a long time. So, yeah, it's nice to see places that aren't just all congregated to either up north or down south. It's good to see some stuff coming out in the Midlands. Yeah. And the final two were going to be James Zian and his partner Anne-Marie at Lincolnshire Amiga Group. Since I've been going to there, I've not missed a single one, and it's been such a great place to go. I've made lots of friends through that, and I hope to continue to be going there and continue to have a great time. And then the final one, and this is I feel a little bit daft because it's a little bit self-plugging as well, because I've got some minor involvement in it, but I also want to shout out to Mike Nicholson and the guys behind Yorkshire Amiga Group, as well as myself, and also other people who've helped us out along the way, like Dave Rowland and Nick Lyons, and Nick's also doing his own thing as well. He's got a retro meetup event in Horsforth Brewery as well, which I missed the first one, but I'll hopefully go to the next one. And basically everybody we've been associated with, who we've done events with, it's been great. It's been a right blast. And okay, I had the idea, but I didn't have the resources to run it. And I've got other people involved who are running it, and it's been great. It's been great. There's been a bit of laughs and a bit of drama along the way, but everything does. Anything that's worthwhile has a little bit of drama at some point.
Yeah No, that's fantastic, and I'm sure they all appreciate the mentions there. That's brilliant. Okay then, mate, I shall speak to you soon, and see you in the channels, in the group and whatever. As I say, make sure you post whatever you can into that group. It's not just solely for things that I'm working on. At the end of the day, I've got no problem with self-plugging, because if you don't do it, who else is going to do it for you?
Yeah, exactly.
It's especially when we're at the level that we're at.
Yeah.
If you don't talk about it, nobody's going to find out about it, are they?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay then. Right. Nice one, mate.
Yeah. See ya.
Meet you soon.
Bye.
Ta-ra.